The creak of the floorboard outside my room woke me that winter morning, sharp and cold as the air biting through the thin foster home walls. I was 16, curled on a sagging mattress, my breath fogging in the dim light of a January dawn. My life? A patchwork of foster homes, empty promises, and faces that never stayed long enough to matter. Abandoned at 4, I'd taught myself to stop asking why I was left, why I wasn't enough. I'd clutch the worn leather bracelet on my wrist, my only keepsake, and shove the hurt down deep. But that morning, a yellowed envelope slid under my door, its edges frayed like it had waited years to find me. One word scrawled on it stopped my heart. Son, foster care teaches you to expect nothing. You learn to live with the ache, the kind that whispers you're nobody's choice. I'd spent years wondering about my parents, replaying blurry memories of a man's voice, low and distant, promising he'd come back. Was I too much, too broken? That letter, though, it was a spark in the dark, burning through everything I thought I was. My father, a billionaire? A man who'd watched me from the shadows, hiding behind a world of wealth I could never touch? It didn't add up. Why would someone with everything let me grow up with nothing? And why did the letter mention a meeting, one I swore I'd never had? The truth wasn't a lifeline. It was a maze of sharp edges, each turn cutting deeper. I wanted to hate him, to tear the letter apart and scream at the sky. But something stopped me. A flicker of hope, fragile as frost, that maybe I wasn't as unlovable as I'd believed. Who was he? Why had he stayed away? And what did that single word, son, mean for a kid like me, who'd spent a lifetime feeling invisible? This is my story, a raw, messy fight to uncover who I am when the world said I was nothing. It's about abandonment, secrets, and the faint chance I was meant for more. Stick with me as I chase the truth, because it's about to get wilder, and I'm not sure I'm ready for what's coming. If you've ever felt lost, searching for where you belong, hit that like button and share a moment when your world turned upside down. Subscribe and walk this path with me. I need you here for every twist. The floorboard outside my door groaned, a jagged sound that knifed through the frost-bitten hush of a January dawn. I was 16, hunched on a sagging mattress in a foster home that reeked of stale coffee and regret, the kind of place where Tia Hope went to die. My life was a scrapbook of slammed doors, broken promises, and faces that faded faster than cheap ink on old receipts. Abandoned at 4, I taught myself to stop asking why I was left, why I wasn't enough. Instead, I poured my pain into a tattered notebook, sketching jagged lines of a world that didn't want me. But that morning something shifted. A yellowed envelope slid under my door, its edges frayed like a wound left open too long. One word scrawled in black ink stopped my heart, son. My fingers clawed at the envelope, tearing it open like it might bite back. Inside, a single type page, crisp and cold, claimed my father was alive. Victor Kane, a billionaire who'd vanished from my life like smoke. The words blurred as I read. My pulse a drumbeat in my throat. A billionaire? My father? The idea was a punch, splitting the fragile shell I'd built around myself. I tried to summon a memory, his face, his voice. But all I got was a fog of foster home chaos, a blur of strangers' hands and empty beds. The letter mentioned a meeting when I was 5, a moment that I should have remembered. But how could I? My past was a house with locked rooms, and I'd lost the keys years ago. I stormed downstairs, the letter crumpled in my fist, and faced my foster mom, Linda. Her eyes, watery and gray, flicked away like she'd been caught stealing. "Some things you're better off not knowing, Ethan," she whispered, her voice a thin thread, unraveling. I wanted to shake her, to scream until she spilled whatever she was hiding. But her silence was a wall, and I was just a kid with a piece of paper. Her gaze darted to the staircase, like she expected someone to barge in. Who? Kane? The thought made my skin crawl. At school, I hid in the library, the hum of fluorescent lights buzzing like my thoughts. I googled Victor Kane, tech mogul, recluse, a shadow in every photo, his face always obscured. His wealth was a fortress, towering and untouchable, a world I could never climb into. Articles called him a genius, a phantom, a man who built empires and erased his past. Was I part of that past? The question gnawed at me, sharp and relentless like a dog with a bone it couldn't bury. That night, back in my room, I sat on the floor, the letter spread out like a crime scene. I traced the word son with my pencil, sketching it into my notebook until the page tore. Had he been watching me? Had I been a shadow in his world, a secret he kept locked away? The bracelet on my wrist, leather worn smooth from years of nervous twisting, felt heavier now. Was it his? A gift from a father I didn't remember? I lay awake, the words searing my mind, wondering if I'd been living in his orbit all along, invisible but never alone. The thought wasn't comfort. It was a blade, cutting deeper with every breath. The foster home was a tomb the next day, its silence heavier than the snow choking the windows. Victor Kane's name lodged in my throat like a splinter, foreign yet piercingly familiar. I sat on my bed, the mattress sagging under me, and traced the leather bracelet on my wrist, its stitching frayed from years of nervous twists. Was it his? Did he leave it to mark me as his, a breadcrumb in the dark? The questions were knives, each one slicing deeper, carving out the boy I thought I was. The letter from yesterday sat on my nightstand, its edges curling like it was ashamed, like it knew it had broken me. I snuck into the foster agency's office after breakfast, my heart hammering as I rifled through my file. Behind faded paperwork I found a photo, a man's silhouette cradling a kid, me, under a sky I couldn't recall. The image was blurry, like a dream half forgotten, but it clawed at something raw inside me. I stuffed it in my pocket, my fingers trembling. Mia, my best friend, caught me later at school, her eyes bright with that annoying optimism that stung like frostbite. "You gotta keep digging, Ethan," she said, her voice too loud, too sure. I pushed her away, my anger a live wire sparking at her perfect life, parents, a dog, a house that didn't smell like despair. That afternoon I did something stupid. I hacked the agency's database, my fingers flying over the library computer, reckless and desperate. A locked file with Kane's name stared back, password protected, mocking me. I slammed the keyboard, drawing glares from kids pretending to study. My phone buzzed as I left, an email with no sender. "You were never alone, Ethan." My stomach lurched, the words slithering under my skin. Who sent it? Kane? Someone else? I checked the email's metadata, nothing, a dead end. The world felt like it was watching me, its eyes hidden in the shadows. Back home, the foster home's silence was a weight, pressing down until I could barely breathe. I sat on the floor, sketching the photo's silhouette in my notebook, the man's shape growing sharper with every stroke. Was he Kane? The kid in his arms, me, looked small, safe, a version of myself I didn't know. The bracelet burned against my wrist, a tether to a past I couldn't reach. I wanted to scream, to tear the house apart, but all I had were questions and a name that didn't fit. At 2 a.m., the floorboard creaked again, a sound that froze my blood. I crept to the door, my breath shallow, expecting another letter, another secret. The hallway was empty, the air thick with something I couldn't name, fear, maybe, or the ghost of a father I'd never known. I checked the locks, the windows, but nothing was out of place. Still, the silence felt alive, like it was whispering secrets I wasn't ready to hear. I climbed back into bed, clutching my notebook, sketching Kane's name until my pencil snapped. Had he been here in this house, watching me sleep? The thought wasn't a comfort, it was a noose, tightening with every heartbeat, pulling me toward a truth I wasn't sure I could survive. He was everywhere now, or maybe I was losing it. A tall figure in a dark coat flickered at the edge of my vision. Across the street, in the school parking lot, gone when I turned. Was it Kane? My mind was a war zone, rage and need clawing at each other like dogs in a pit. The letter said he'd watch me, but why let me drown in foster care's muck? I clutched the blurry photo from the agency, its edges worn from my obsessive grip. The kid in it, me, smiled, a stranger's joy I couldn't touch. Happiness was a foreign tongue, and I'd forgotten how to speak it. I ditched school to stake out Kane's office, a glass monolith that screamed money, its windows reflecting a world I'd never belonged to. I lingered across the street, my hoodie pulled tight, but guards spotted me, their stares cold as the January wind. "Move along, kid," one growled, his hand on a radio. I slunk away, my heart a fist, pounding. Mia caught up with me later, dragging me to a diner that smelled of grease and second chances. Her warmth was a blade cutting through my armor. "Why do you get a family when I get ghosts?" I snapped, my voice raw, spilling the hurt I'd buried. She flinched but stayed, her silence louder than my anger. Back home, a second letter waited in my room, handwritten, its ink smudged like tears. "Stop digging, Ethan, or you'll break more than yourself." The words were a punch, stealing my breath. A threat, a plea? I didn't know, but it felt like Kane's voice, sharp and distant. I traced my bracelet stitching, a memory flickering, a man's voice, low, saying, "Hold on to this." Was it him? The question was a splinter, lodged deep, festering. I wanted to scream, to tear the letter apart, but it was all I had of him. That night, I dreamed of his face, half-shadowed, his eyes locked on mine, calling my name. I woke gasping, the room too small, the air too thick. I checked the hallway, but it was empty, the floorboards silent now. Still, I felt him. His presence, his absence, a weight I couldn't shake. I sketched the dream in my notebook, his eyes too real, too familiar, like they'd been watching me forever. Was he out there hiding in the dark, or was I chasing a ghost I'd made up? I sat on my bed, the letter trembling in my hands, and wondered what I'd risk to know him. Everything, maybe. The bracelet felt heavier, a chain linking me to a man I didn't trust. I wanted to hate him, to burn his name from my mind, but that smile in the photo, the kid who wasn't me anymore, kept me tethered. I wasn't just a foster kid. I was a question mark, a secret even to myself. The world outside my window was a blur of snow and shadows. And somewhere in it, Kane was waiting, or hiding. I didn't know which scared me more. What would you risk to know the one person who left you behind? That second letter was a live wire, sparking in my pocket, burning through every thought. Stop digging. The words were a blade, slicing open the fragile calm I'd faked for years. Threat or warning, I didn't care. Kane's world was a locked door, and I was done being nobody's son. My sketches turned brutal, jagged lines in my notebook, a map of a life I couldn't piece together. The foster home's stale coffee stench clung to me as I paced, the bracelet on my wrist a tether to a past I couldn't trust. I'd claw through his secrets, even if they shredded me. I slipped into the library after school, the air thick with dust and old paper, and scoured public records for Victor Kane. He was a ghost. Articles mentioned his tech empire, his billions, but his past was a blank slate, erased like he'd never existed. My fingers trembled on the keyboard, chasing rumors of a man who buried his life in shadows. Was I one of those shadows? The question was a weight crushing my chest. I wanted to scream, to break the silence that mocked me. But all I had was a name and a need that wouldn't quit. A social worker, Ms. Carter called out of nowhere, her voice thin and jittery. "Have you been approached, Ethan?" she asked, like I was a bomb about to go off. I pressed her, my voice sharp, but she hung up, leaving me with static and suspicion. Her fear was a clue. A crack in Kane's fortress. I followed a tip from a foster kid at school to a dive bar on the edge of town, its neon sign flickering like a bad omen. The place reeked of cheap whiskey and the desperation, and kids whispered about Kane's scouts picking out special kids, whatever that meant. My skin crawled, the air too heavy, too wrong. A man at the bar, his cheeks scarred like a warning, stared too long. "You look like him," he muttered, his voice low, slicing through the bar's hum. Before I could ask who, he melted into the crowd, leaving me with a pulse that wouldn't slow. Back in my room, I reached for my bracelet. Gone. Panic hit like a fist, my hands tearing through drawers under the bed, the floorboards. It was my only piece of him, the only thing that felt real. Had the scarred man taken it? Had Kane? The loss was a wound, raw and bleeding, stripping me bare. I sat on the floor, the letter in my hands, its words blurring through my tears. Stop digging. But I couldn't. Kane was a puzzle, and I was a piece he'd thrown away. My sketches were chaos now, his name scrawled over every page, a scream in ink. The foster home's walls seemed to close in, the silence mocking me, daring me to keep going. I didn't know if I was chasing truth or destruction, but I'd find him, even if it broke me. The night outside was a void, and I was falling into it, a boy with nothing but a name and a rage that burned hotter than fear. Without my bracelet, I was unmoored, a ship cut loose in a storm. I tore my room apart, ripping sheets, flipping the mattress, screaming at the walls that swallowed my voice. The foster home's stale coffee stink mixed with my sweat, my rage a fire that burned through Kane, the system, the world that kept stealing from me. I wasn't just a kid anymore, I was a fuse, sparking, ready to explode. The letters, the photo, that cryptic email, they were shards of a truth I'd pry open, even if it tore my hands to ribbons. I cornered my foster mom, Linda, in the kitchen, her hands shaking as she clutched a mug. "Someone was in my room!" I spat, my voice ablade. She admitted it, her eyes dodging mine, swearing she didn't know who. Her lie was a thin veil, and I wanted to rip it apart, but she turned away, muttering about keeping safe. Safe from what? Kane? Myself? The question was a splinter, festering. That night my phone buzzed. A new email, no sender, just a grainy video. A kid, me, laughed in a park, chasing a kite, a man's voice calling, "Ethan, come back!" My heart stopped. Was that Kane? The memory was a ghost slipping through my fingers. The scarred man from the bar found me at school, slipping me a business card with Kane's company logo and a date. Tomorrow, downtown. His eyes were cold, like he knew my secrets and hated me for them. I clutched the card, its edges biting my palm, a lifeline and a trap in one. At the library, I dug deeper, my hands shaking as I found a news article. A missing kid tied to Kane's charity, same age, same story, my face staring back from a grainy photo. The room spun, the air too thick to breathe. Was I that kid? Or was I something else? A piece in Kane's game. I stood before my cracked mirror, whispering son to my reflection, searching for a boy I didn't know. My face looked wrong, too sharp, too haunted, like I'd been carved from someone else's life. The video played on loop in my mind, that voice, Kane's, calling my name. I wanted to believe it was real, that I had been wanted once, but the foster home's silence screamed louder. I was nobody's. My sketches were frantic now, jagged lines of a park I didn't remember, a man I couldn't trust. The card burned in my pocket, tomorrow's date a ticking clock. I lay awake, the foster home's walls pressing in, the air heavy with secrets I couldn't name. Had Kane been here, stealing my bracelet, watching me break? The thought was a knife, twisting deeper. I didn't know if I was chasing him or running from myself, but I'd go to that address. I'd face the truth, even if it shattered me. The night outside was a void, and I was falling. A boy with no anchor, no past, just a name and a fire that wouldn't die. Have you ever wondered if your life is built on someone else's lies? The date on the card led me to a glass tower downtown, its sterile gleam mocking my frayed jeans and pounding heart. The air was sharp with January cold, but I burned inside, clutching the letters like they could shield me from the truth. I wasn't here to beg. I wanted answers, raw and jagged no matter how they cut. The building loomed, a fortress of secrets, and every step felt like walking into a trap. The city's hum was a distant roar, but inside me it was all static, a scream I couldn't let out. The receptionist's smile froze when I said Kane's name, her hands fumbling as she led me to a private room. The space was all sharp edges, glass walls, steel chairs, a place that didn't want me. I sat, the letters crinkling in my pocket, my fingers itching to sketch the fear crawling up my spine. A lawyer slunk in, slick as oil, his tie too tight, his eyes too nervous. "The letters are a mistake," he said, his voice smooth but brittle like glass about to crack. "I didn't buy it." His fingers twitched, betraying the lie, and I wanted to shake him until the truth spilled out. I slammed the letters on the table, my voice a growl. "Where's Kane? I'm his son." The word son felt foreign, a blade in my mouth. The lawyer flinched, muttering about sensitive matters, his eyes darting to the door like he expected Kane himself to walk through. He was hiding something, and it wasn't just a man. It was a secret big enough to swallow me whole. I leaned in, my heart a hammer, but he stood signaling a guard. I wasn't getting answers, not yet. The guard escorted me out, his grip firm, but not before I saw it. A photo on the wall, Kane, younger, holding a kid who could have been me. His face was half hidden, but those eyes, mine maybe, stared back, a ghost from a life I didn't remember. My breath caught, the world tilting. Was that real, or was I seeing what I wanted? Outside, the scarred man leaned against a car, his smirk a knife. "He's closer than you think, kid," he whispered, his voice low, slicing through the city's noise. I froze, my skin prickling, but he was gone before I could speak. Back in the foster home, I sat on my bed, the photo and letters spread out like evidence against a crime I didn't understand. I sketched the man from the wall, his eyes haunting me, my pencil carving lines of doubt and rage. Had Kane been here in this city watching me break? The bracelet's absence was a wound, raw and open, but the letters were heavier now, their words a map to a truth I wasn't sure I could face. The foster home's silence was a weight pressing down, and I wondered if I was chasing a father, a lie. The night outside was a black mirror reflecting a boy who didn't know who he was, but who'd walked through fire to find out. Sleep was a ghost that night, slipping through my fingers like the truth I couldn't grab. The photo from Kane's office, the lawyer's lies, the scarred man's smirk, they were shards of a puzzle that cut deeper with every fit. Victor Kane wasn't just a name anymore. He was a shadow stitched into my skin, a weight I couldn't shake. I sat on my floor, sketching his face from the photo, my pencil trembling as I tried to make sense of a man who'd left me to break. The foster home's stale air choked me. It silenced a scream that echoed my own. Mia met me at school, her eyes sharp with worry, and we hacked the agency's database again, reckless and desperate. We found a file tying Kane to my adoption, sealed by a court order, its digital lock mocking us. My fingers shook as I typed, Mia's breath hot on my neck, urging me on. We got nothing but a name and a wall, but it was enough to keep me burning. I tracked down Ms. Carter, the social worker, cornering her outside her office. "Kane paid to hide my records," she admitted, her voice cracking like thin ice. "But why?" I pressed, my voice a blade. She turned away, her silence a door slamming shut. That night my phone buzzed, a text from the scarred man. "Meet me tonight, bring the letters." My gut screamed trap, but I was too far gone to care. I met him in an alley, the air thick with diesel and fear. He leaned against a wall, his scar glinting under a streetlight. "I work for Kane," he said, his voice low, like he was confessing a sin. "Hired to keep you safe." Safe from what? His eyes held something darker, a secret he wouldn't spill. I wanted to punch him, to demand answers, but he handed me my bracelet, saying, "Kane wanted you to have this." It had felt like a shackle now, heavy with his guilt, not mine. I stumbled home, the bracelet burning my wrist, a chain linking me to a man I didn't know. I sketched the alley, the scarred man's face, my lines jagged with rage and doubt. Had Kane been protecting me or hiding me? The question was a splinter, festering. I wanted to tear the bracelet off, to burn it with the letters, but it was all I had, a piece of him or a lie I'd told myself. The foster home's walls seemed to pulse, watching me. And I wondered if Kane's shadow was here, in this room, in my blood. I lay awake, the letters on my nightstand, their words a taunt. "Son, stop digging." But I couldn't stop. Kane was a puzzle, and I was a piece he'd discarded. My notebook was chaos now, sketches of a man I couldn't trust, a life I couldn't claim. The night outside was a void, swallowing my thoughts, and I was falling. A boy with no anchor, just a name and a rage that burned hotter than fear. I find him, even if it broke me, 'cause the truth wasn't just a door, it was a fire, and I was ready to burn. Keep you safe. The scarred man's words were a splinter lodged in my brain, twisting with every thought. Safe from what? Kane? Myself? The questions were a storm, drowning me in doubt. The bracelet hung heavy on my wrist, no longer mine but his, a chain tying me to a man who'd let me bleed for years. I didn't know if I wanted to find him or burn his world down. My sketches were chaos, jagged lines of a truth I couldn't face. The foster home's stale air choking me as I paced, a caged animal with nowhere to run. I followed the scarred man to a warehouse on the city's edge, its rusted walls reeking of oil and secrets. I hid in the shadows, overhearing him talk about erasing Kane's past. His voice cold as steel, my heart pounded, a drumbeat of fear and fury. Inside I found a box, photos, letters, a birth certificate with my name but a mother I'd never known. Sarah. The name was a knife, cutting through the fog of my past. Was she real or another of Kane's lies? My hands shook as I stuffed the papers in my jacket, my breath ragged. The lawyer from the office appeared, his face pale, his voice frantic. "Stop, Ethan!" he begged, his eyes darting like a trapped rat. "Kane's dying. You're his last mistake." The words were a punch, stealing my air. Dying? I wanted to laugh, to scream. He'd left me to rot, and now he was running out of time? I turned to run, but the scarred man grabbed me, his grip bruising, his breath hot on my face. "You're his blood, Ethan! His legacy!" His words were a blade, slicing deeper than I could stand. I broke free, my legs burning as I fled, the papers heavy in my pocket. Back home, a new letter waited on my bed, in Kane's handwriting. "I'm sorry, Ethan. Find me." The words were a wound, raw and bleeding. Sorry? For what? For abandoning me? For hiding me? I wanted to tear it apart, to burn it with my sketches, but I couldn't. It was a map to him, to the truth, and I was too far gone to turn back. The foster home's silence was a weight pressing down, and I felt him, Kane, everywhere, his shadow in every corner, his voice in my head. I sat on the floor, the birth certificate trembling in my hands, Sarah's name staring back. Who was she? Why had he kept her from me? My notebook was a battlefield. Sketches of a woman I didn't know, a man I couldn't trust. The bracelet was a chain binding me to a past that wasn't mine. I didn't know if I was chasing truth or destruction, but I'd find him, even if it broke me. The night outside was a black mirror reflecting a boy who was nothing but questions, a fire burning hotter than fear, ready to consume whatever came next. Kane's letter gave an address. A mansion outside town, its gates like teeth guarding a mouthful of secrets. I went, not for him, but for the hole in my chest where a father should have been. My sketches were stuffed in my pocket, a map of rage and grief, each line a scream I couldn't let out. The bracelet burned my wrist, a tether to a past I couldn't escape. This wasn't about his billions. It was about my truth, raw and jagged, and I'd carve it out of him if I had to. The January night was a blade, cutting through my thin jacket as I approached. A butler led me through the mansion's marble halls, the air thick with dust and regret, like a house that had forgotten how to breathe. My steps echoed, too loud, too small, a boy out of place in a world that wasn't his. The study was a tomb, dark and heavy, and Kane emerged from the shadows, frail and gray, his eyes mirroring mine but older, broken. His voice was the one from my dreams, soft and cracked, saying my name like a prayer he'd forgotten. I wanted to hate him, to spit in his face, but those eyes stopped me cold. "I left you to protect you," he said, his words thin like paper tearing. Enemies, he claimed, men who'd hurt me to get to him, but his excuses were ash in my mouth, tasteless after years of foster home filth. He would watch me suffer, let me believe I was nothing. Why? I wanted to scream, but my voice was a whisper, asking about Sarah, my mother. He showed me a photo album, me a toddler, with him and a woman, her smile warm, her eyes gone forever. She died, he said, before I could know her. His hand reached for mine, trembling, begging forgiveness, but it felt like a trap. I tore away, my heart a wildfire, burning through his words, his lies. "You don't get to fix this," I spat, my voice raw, breaking. His eyes filled, but I didn't care. He was dying, he said, and I was his regret, but I wasn't his redemption. The bracelet was a chain, his guilt, not my salvation. I turned to leave, the album heavy in my hands, a piece of a life I'd never had. The mansion's halls swallowed me as I walked out, the air thick with his absence. My sketches were a weight, a record of a boy who'd been broken but was still here. Kane's voice echoed, a ghost I couldn't shake, but I wouldn't let it define me. The night outside was a void, and I was a spark, burning brighter than his shadow. I had found my truth, not his, even if it meant walking away from the only father I'd ever know. The bracelet stayed, a reminder I'd survived him, and I'd keep surviving, no matter what came next. I left Kane's mansion, his voice a ghost clawing at my back, his eyes, mine but weaker, burning into me. He was dying, and I was his regret, but I wasn't his to save. I'd spent 16 years believing I was nothing, a foster kid with no name, no roots. Now I knew I was a secret he couldn't face, and that truth didn't heal. It set me free. The bracelet stayed on my wrist, not his gift but my trophy, proof I'd survived his absence. The January night was a blade, but I was fire, burning hotter than his shadow. In a park, I burned the letters, their ashes rising like the boy I'd buried, the one who begged for answers, who thought a father could fix him. The flames licked the sky, and I felt lighter, unmoored, but not lost. Mia found me there, her hand on my shoulder, her own scars, her mom's addiction, her own battles, making her my anchor. "You're enough, Ethan," she said, her voice steady, cutting through my chaos. I wanted to believe her, to let her words sink in, but trust was a muscle I'd never worked. I tracked down Ms. Carter one last time, cornering her at her office. She gave me my mother's name, Sarah, a thread to chase, a piece of me Kane couldn't touch. Her eyes were soft, almost sorry, but I didn't need her pity. I needed a past that was mine. Back at school, I filled my notebook with sketches of Sarah's name, of a future I'd build, not one Kane had stolen. The lines were sharp, bold, a map of a boy who wasn't his son anymore, but something more. A survivor, a spark. The foster home's porch was my stage that night, the stars a crowd that didn't judge. I stood there, the bracelet heavy but mine, vowing to be seen, to be more than a secret or a shadow. My sketches were a promise, each one a step away from Kane toward a life I'd claim. The air was cold, but my heart was a furnace, burning with a fire I'd built from years of pain, of questions, of truths that didn't break me but made me. This is my truth, jagged, raw, and mine. It's not done, it's just starting. I'm not Kane's son, not the foster kid who begged for scraps. I'm Ethan, and I'm enough. If you've ever had to claw your way out of someone else's shadow, if you've ever burned your past to build your future, hit that like button and tell me about the fire you found. Share the moment you knew you were enough. Subscribe because I'm still sketching my story. Every line, every scar, and I need you here for every stroke, every step, every spark that comes next.